فرزند زہرا یہ حالات برے ہیں.
کاشانہ بصیرت ایک ایسا مکمل یوٹیوب چینل جس پر محروم بصارت کے لیے بالخصوص اور تمام افراد کے لیے بالعموم سینکڑوں کی تعداد میں اسلامی کتب دستیاب ہیں. لہذا گزارش ہے کہ آپ اپنی ذمہ داری نبھاتے ہوئے کاشانہ بصیرت کو سبسکرائب کرنے کے ساتھ ساتھ بیل آئیکن کو پریس کیجئے تاکہ آپ علم کے حصول کے ساتھ ساتھ مذہب اہل بیت کی اشاعت میں بھی اہم کردار ادا کرتے رہیں. کاشانہ بصیرت.
فرزند زہرا یہ حالات برے ہیں.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Shireen Fatima and you are listening to the YouTube channel of Kashana Basirat. Name of the book is Kamaluddin wa Tamamun Neema. It has 2 volumes and it is written by the author Sheikh Saduq. Publishers are Az-Zahra Publications. Now it is about 12 centuries passed from Imam Mehdi's hidden life, and the bothering time of his hidden life will continue up to his reappearance. According to Imam Raza alayhi salam, Imam's reappearance will be extended to the day of doom. No one knows but God. It is hard, people, and it will happen suddenly. Therefore, any investigations to find the exact time of his reappearance is fruitless, and our duty is to wait. The meaning of waiting for is to desire his reappearance desperately and looking forward to his reappearance. This waiting results from faith and it is rewarded. In addition, it has spiritual values. Waiting for him, like other religious practices, has practical aspects, which is pointed out by our infallibles. Following infallibles' order in this regard is the duty of people who live in the time of his hidden life. The book deals with the personality of the hidden Imam, his occultation, and everything related to him in an analytical and systematic manner, and is penetrating in its subject and exceptional in its domain. Sheikh Saduq has presented strong arguments from the life story of the Prophet regarding their occultation, Khayba, to prove the occulation of the 12th Imam. And hadiths have been quoted extensively from the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the infallible Imams to support of the writer's contentions. The translator of this book is Sayyid Athar Hussain Rizvi. Category, it is written Prophethood and Imamat. And miscellaneous information is Kamaluddin wa Tamamun Neema. In bracket, it is written Perfection of Faith and Completion of Divine Favor, Volume 1, by Sheikh Saduq Abi Jafar Muhammad bin Al-Hussein Bawe Ummi, and it is translated by Sayyid Athar Hussain S.H. Rizvi, and it is published by Az-Zahra Publications. In featured categories, it is written Introducing the Ahl Bayt, Resources for Further Research, and Shia's Belief Explained. Person tags mein, it is written Imam al-Mahdi. This book has total 290 pages. And in the name of Allah, the Magnificent, the Merciful. Now I am reading a brief biography of the author. The author is the Venerable Sheikh As-Saduq Jafar ibn Ali Al-Hassan bin Babawe, commonly known as Saduq. He was among the Shia scholars of the 4th century Hijri. He was also the chief of the clan, a minaret of truth and religion, a leader of his time, and in general such a personality that no praise is sufficient to do justice with his actual status. The whole Muslim community is unanimous about his leadership and lofty status. He was born through the prayers of Imam of the time, and a written certificate was also issued by the holy Imams in the favor. He is very righteous, blessed, jurisprudent. Also, after his holy testimony, whatever may be said or written about him will definitely be less than that befits his position. His bounties have surrounded all his writings, and books have benefited the scholars as well as laymen. Each and every example of his knowledge and action testifies to his lofty stature and greatness. And one who undertakes a deep study of biographical books will conclude that Sheikh Saduq, on the basis of his merits and intellectual excellence, was the leader of all those who succeeded him. He is the standard bearer of jurisprudence. He is the leader of traditions, scholars, the Imam of Hadith narrators, and a master of scholastic theology. All the qualities of excellence in knowledge, perfection of intellectual, goodness of understanding, a remarkable memory, and a sharp perception had gathered in his person. He traveled far from the place of his birth in order to collect traditions from the narrators of traditions, and he stayed with them to obtain the narrated reports from them. Among the places he traveled to included Astarabad, Brugan, Nishapur, Mawalarz, Samarkand, Fargana, Balakh, Hamdan, Baghdad, Fez, Makkah, and Medina. It should be remembered that travel has many benefits. It is the best way of perfecting the intellect and developing knowledge. In addition to this, it also includes spread of knowledge, propagation of religion, and the dispersal of facts. And if there had been such great personalities in this community who first acquired knowledge and then undertook to spread it among others, a great many people would have remained ignorant and mired in misguidance and deviation from religion. And if the traveling personalities are intelligent and hardworking, they would obtain from the scholars of other areas such points of knowledge and recognition that they cannot gain from the scholars of their own areas. They would, they would also succeed in learning many things that they have not learned from their teachers. In the same way, the people of places to which they travel would also learn from him things they that they could not learn from the local scholars. Many debates takes place between the traveling scholars and intelligentsia of those places, resulting in clearing many understandings and clarifications of doubts. There are many other benefits to accrue from the journey of religious interactions. Thus, Allah Almighty says, why should not then a company from every party from among them go forth, that they may apply themselves to obtain understanding in religion, and that they may warn their people when they come back to them, that they may be cautious. The Venerable Sheikh Saduq was an expert in his field who attained priority among all in such a way that no one could claim to have got even 1/10 of what he achieved. Actually, he used to take lightly the difficulties of his journeys and did not accord much importance to the discomfort he had to face. He traveled through air deserts, battled ravaged areas, traversed deserts, and crossed mountains. He passed through foreign lands and alien cities at a time when a traveler was susceptible to so many perils and the modes of travel were beyond description. Let us go through some details of his travel in order to gain a clearer picture. The author was born in the Iranian town of Qum. He attended classes of scholars and gained knowledge from the learned of Qum. Thereafter, upon the insistence of the people of Ray, he shifted there for some time. Then he visited the holy mausoleum of Imam Raza alayhi salam and returned again to Ray. On his return journey from Nishapur, he was surrounded by the elders of Nishapur, and the scholars stood before him in rows. They benefited from the light of his wisdom and gained from the expertise in religious sciences. In the same way, the author also profited by the knowledge of great scholars of Nishapur like Abu Ali Hussain bin Ahmad Bihaqi. He was heard traditions from Abdul Wahid bin Muhammad bin Abdewas Nishapuri, Abu Mansur Ahmad bin Ibrahim ibn Bakr al-Kasuri, Abu Said al-Muslim Muhammad bin al-Fadl bin Muhammad bin Ishaq Nishapuri, Abu Tayyib Hussain bin Ahmad bin Muhammad Razi, Abdullah bin Muhammad bin Abdul Wahab Sajazi, and Abu Nasr Ahmad bin Ishaq Hussain bin Ahmad bin Ubaid. During his stay in Nishapur, people visited him in groups. In his interactions with these people, Sheikh Sadood summarized that most of them harbored about doubts about the 12th Imam and were confused in this regard. They did not acknowledge the evidences in this matter. So he focused all his efforts in bringing them to the right path and removing their misconceptions through his knowledge and scholarly expertise. He undertook this mission in such a dictated way that very soon he earned the title of the greatest scholar of Khorasan. After that, he headed to Mawalurals. At this place, he heard traditions from the group of scholars, including Abdul Hussein Muhammad bin Ali bin Shah Fiqh and Abu Yusuf Rafi bin Abdullah bin Abdul Malik. Later, he turned his attention to Baghdad, where he was accorded a warm welcome, and the elders of the Imamiya sect heard traditions from him. He in turn heard traditions from a group of scholars in Baghdad that included personalities like Hassan bin Yahya Alvi Husseini, well known as Ibn Abi Tahir, Ibrahim bin Harun Hayasti, and Muhammad bin Umar al Hafiz. Sheikh Saduq visited Baghdad twice, once in 352 AH and again in 355 AH. On his return from the holy house of Kaaba, when he reached the city of Faith, Abu Ali Ahmad bin Abi Jafar Bilhaqi narrated traditions to him. After this, he entered Kufa and heard traditions from Kufan scholars, including Muhammad bin Bukr Naqash, Ahmad bin Ibrahim bin Harun Qazi Fehmi in the Kufa Mosque, Hassan bin Muhammad bin Sayyid Hashmi Kufi, Abdul Hassan Ali bin Ali Mujawar in Kufa Mosque, Abdul Qasim Hassan bin Muhammad al Shikri Mudakkar, Abu Zar Yahya bin Zahid bin al Abbas Baz, and Abdul Hassan Ali bin al Hussein bin Sufyan bin Yaqub al Hamadani in their residences. The next town on agenda was Hamadan, where he heard traditions from Qasim bin Muhammad bin Ahmad bin Abdwaya as Siraj, Fadl bin al Abbas. Then he journeyed to Balkh and noted own traditional reports from local scholars of the area that included Hussein bin Muhammad, Hussein bin Ahmad, Hussein bin Ali bin Muhammad bin Ali bin Umar Attar, Hakim Abu Hamid, Ahmad bin al Hussein bin Ali, Ubaidullah bin Ahmad al Fiqh, Tahir bin Muhammad bin Yunus bin Haiwa al Fiqh, and Abdul Hassan Muhammad bin Sayyid Samarkandi al Fiqh. The next place of his visit was Ilk. In Ilk, he was related to traditions by Muhammad bin Amr bin Ali bin Abdul Basri, Muhammad bin Al Hassan bin Ibrahim, Abu Muhammad Bakr bin Ali bin Muhammad, and Abu Hassan Ali bin Abdullah ibn Ahmad Ashwari. During his stay there, he was paid a visit by Sharifuddin Abu Abdullah, popularly known as Ibn Noma, who requested him to compile a book of Islamic laws. Sheikh Saduq accepted his advice and wrote his excellent book titled Man La Yahzarul Fiqh. From Iraq, the Sheikh went to Samarkand and paid audience to traditions narrated by Abu Muhammad Abdus bin Ali bin Al Abbas al Juzjani and Abu Asad Abdus Samad bin Shahid al Ansari. During his visit to Fargana, he heard narrations from Tamim bin Abdullah, Ahmad Muhammad bin Jafar Fargani, Ismail bin Mansur, and Abu Ahmad Muhammad bin Abu Abdullah As-Safai. All this was for the sake of remaining close to the books of Allah and the family of revelation, for defending the sanity, fulfillment of duties, defense of truth, decimation of divine recognition, and propagation of faith. Indeed, in the history of Islam, he has opened an illuminated and vast chapter for himself in which he prominently shine his writings and books. The passage of time couldn't destroy them because he was like a raging sea of information and the greatest scholar of science of traditions whose writings illuminated all the corners of the world. In the matter of Islamic jurisprudence, he was an authentic point of reference. Questions regarding various aspects of religion and religious laws were sent to him and he replied to them in the best way. Najasi has mentioned something under the title of Replies to Problems in his book Rijal, which would further illustrate this point. He says Sheikh Saduq had replied to questions received from Qazwin, Misr, Basra, and Nishapur, and they are compiled in different books. He also wrote books in reply to the letter of Abu Muhammad Farsi, a book in reply to a letter from Baghdad, and yet another in reply to a question received in month of Ramadan. He wrote a letter to the people of Ray regarding the matter of ghabat, occultation. In the same way, he held discussions and debates in defense of the true religion that were written down for the posterity. The best of such debates is the one that was held in the court of King Ruknunanind Baved Dailami. It was held at a time when the fame of Sheikh Saduq has reached all the corners of the world. The ruler sent one of the representatives to invite the Sheikh. When he reached the court, he was received by the king himself. The king had him seated next to him and paid exceeding honor to him. Then he asked the Sheikh some very complex and difficult questions, which he replied with absolute satisfactory replies, illuminating the veracity of the religion. The king and other attendees accepted the arguments, and the opponents had no choice but to accept the proofs. Among the books listed by Najashi are account of the debate in the court of Ruknu the Dula, according of another debate, account of third debate, account of fourth debate, and account of fifth debate, etc. The most important point of discussion in these gatherings was the veracity of Imamiya faith and the matter of ghiyabat, occultation. These debates and discussions were specially arranged for the Shia people of Twelver Asna Ashri faith because they had, at that time, separated from the Imam who should have been present among them all the time. The situation was such that even during the period of minor occultation, Gheba, Gheba Soghra, only the four special deputies in their respective tenures had direct contact with the Holy Imam alayhis salam. Also, even the learned and scholars of the community spoke of him using titles and codes without openly disclosing his name and qualities, etc. So, the majority of the people were very prone to all kinds of doubts and illusions. Consequently, the debate of scholars like Sheikh Saduq went a long way in clarifying doubts of the Shia populace and further strengthened the foundation of Imamiya faith on which would be built in the near future in edifice of jurisprudence that shall last till the Holy Imam alayhis salam himself reappears to openly take the reins of the community. The doubts prevalent in that age was further promoted by the proliferation of subsects like the Zaidiya, who were particularly strong, Qasiniya, Ismailiya, and Waqifiya, who did not believe in any Imam after Imam Musa Kazim alayhis salam. These subsects were becoming stronger by the day, and some of them even aligned with each other, putting the true Imamiya beliefs into a grave danger and deviating a large number of Shia people from the faith of their forefathers. The author sensed this looming peril and stepped forward to correct the situation and save the Shias from this deviation and inhalating circumstances. If it was not for the efforts and debates of scholars like Sheikh Saduq, it was very likely that the majority of Shia people would have succumbed to their doubts and completely washed their hands from the belief of Imam Mahdi alayhis salam. History and traditions bear witnesses how these warriors of the field of knowledge strive to save the people from perdition and the true Imamiya faith from destruction. History bears witness that how they endeavored to remove doubts and clarified complex issues of religion, especially the matter of ghaiba, so that the Shia community may not give up the authentic faith and stray to the path of deviation. The Venerable Sheikh penned books on almost all religious sciences and illuminated all aspects of faith that were required by Muslim Ummah. All his writings are marked with distinctive style and arrangement. As mentioned by Sheikh Tusi, the number of his writings reached to 300. However, most of them were destroyed in the ravages of time and circumstances and decayed in some corners of libraries. So, what remains in only the sketch of the original, and those that are lost have only left behind their names. In brackets, it is written titles. Some of his books survived a few hundred years and then suddenly disappeared as if they were lifted up to the heavens. Only a part of his huge wealth, comprising of not more than 20 books, has survived to this day. Even these books were littered with errors and differences in various versions, etc. As a result of which they were neither accepted by the scholars nor reached the standards of scholarship. It was so because those who were involved in their reproduction were neither capable nor committed to this job. Thus, a situation appeared when, despite the presence of these few books, they were of hardly any scholarly value. This problem was not only with the books of Sheikh Saduq, it was the same for writings other well-known scholars. For example, in the case of Ibn Qulubeh, nothing remains from his writings except the books of Kamilus Ziyarat, although it is confirmed that he has written dozens of books. Sheikh Mufid had written more than 200 books, but only a few have survived to this day. The same in the case with the writing of Sheikh Tusi and Ilama Hilli. In his compiled book, Tahiri has mentioned that 500 treatises written by the hand of Ilama Hilli were found, which were in addition to the books that people had access to. 90% of Ilama Hilli's writings are lost as a result of centuries of conflict and bloodshed between Muslim sects, in which the greatest loss was suffered through burning of libraries or throwing books into the sea river. After that, the remaining books were destroyed by the Tatars. Thus, our written treasures were always prone to destruction at the hands of the opponents. In the present age, also, some people approached us from far away lands and took away portions of our written heritage in exchange of a paltry sum. Actually, this matter is highlighted only to create an awareness how our laxity and indifferences in this matter has weakened havoc with our Islamic heritage, so that we do not repeat such mistakes. Also, most books that see the light of publication in this period are such that they are printed very hardly without any regard of correcting textual error and even lack proper success from which it is taken so that it can be compared with them. Booksellers and publishers who are in this trade only for the sake of monetary gains have contributed largely in worsening the situation. When such books comes to a researcher, he is absolutely defeated if he wants to understand or confirm a word, a phrase, or some lines. In spite of all his efforts, he would not be able to achieve his aim, as the publisher has not provided any clue from which version he has reproduced it. Though we must admit that some books stand out prominently as they were fortunate to have been corrected, checked, and edited by a great scholar. May the Almighty bestow a great reward to them for such a service to Islam. Only these are the books that can be relied upon. Now we are reading about the teachers and students of the author. Sheikh Saduq has narrated traditions from a large number of important traditionists whose count reaches to 250. One can refer to the foreword of Mani al-Akbar, where all the names are listed. In the same way, around 20 learned scholars have narrated traditions from Sheikh Sadhu, and they are introduced and forwarded of Man la Yazrul Fiqh, death and place of burial. From the introduction of Manial Akbar, Sheikh Saduq passed away in the year 381 AH. He was aged 70 and odd years at that time. His magnificent tomb, having a towering dome, is built near the mausoleum of Abdul Azim Hasni in the Rayov province. Many people visit the place seeking blessings and paying respects. This mausoleum was first built by Fateh Ali Shah in 1238 AH. This was after the well known miracle that convinced the king, the queen, and the courtiers. The detail of the incident are mentioned of Kash. Among his miracles is one that was seen in the present age and which a large number of people with perception themselves witnessed and which people from faraway places also saw is that the Sheikh tomb, which is situated in Ray, was damaged with heavy rains as a result of which were developed a crack. When renovations began and the back was examined closely, it was found that it led an underground chamber in which the last remains of Sheikh was placed. In this chamber, people saw an elegant dead body which was half covered but was not exposed. It was a huge body and nails showed henna coloration, and around the body lay twisted, dusty threads of the shroud clothes. The news spread all over the city of Tehran and even reached Fateh Ali Shah Kachar, who was the great grandfather of Nasiruddin Shah. This happened around 1238 AH. So the king, with perfectly good faith, decided to see for himself and he reached the tomb with an encourage in of courtiers. Since the officers advised that king himself does not enter the burial chamber, he deputed some reliable person to go down and report the facts to him. At last, the truth of the miracle was confirmed for him, and he finally ordered that the crack be filled and the tomb be renovated in the most magnificent way. I myself have heard about this incident from an eyewitness, and some of our senior scholars have mentioned this event in their books. Mamkani has quoted this incident from Personification of Justice and Truth. Sayyid Ibrahimi Lawasani Tehrani Tanhiqul Miqal. This book is very penetrating in its subject and exceptional in its domain. No other book excels in it in perfection, sweetness, and attraction. Though many detailed books are composed on this topic, none is like it in clarity and comprehensiveness. In this book, the author has dealt with the personality of hidden Imam alayhi salam, his occultation, and everything related to him in an analytical and systematic manner. He has supported each of his contentions with the sayings of the infallible Imams alayhi salam. If it also contains the doubts and discussions with the opponents of Shia fiqh and provides clarifications of doubts and misunderstandings that haunted some followers of Imamiya religion. He has composed detailed refutations of those who deny the holy Imams. He has included in this book all that has been recorded on the subject and which he gained currency among the populace, whether it be authentic or weak, good or not. He has collected all the material that was available to him. But when he is arguing his point, he has taken the help of only authentic and excessively narrated traditions. For example, after writing about the cases of extremely long age, he remarks, these reports are not among those that can be used to prove occultation because the factuality and the truth of Ghaibat is provided for us by the traditions of the Holy Prophet and narrational reports of the Holy Imams alayhi salam. Just as traditions prove the veracity of the faith of Islam, its Sharia and practical laws. Now we are reading editions of this book. This book was published twice in Iran and once in Najaf al Ashraf. It was also once printed with translation. The Arabic version from which this book is translated in English was based on 7 manuscripts dating from 966 to 1079 AH. The Arabic editor Ali Akbar Ghifari is very capable scholar, has fully checked the text and compared it with various versions and very painstakingly removed the typographical and textual errors that abounded in almost all previous editions of this important book. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all the praise is for that God who is one, unique, and single. He is needless, ever living, all powerful, all knowing, and wise. He is pure from the traits of the creatures. He is most high and most exalted. He is glorious and honored, and perfect and elevated status. He is one with a firm resolve and a perfect intention. Nothing is like him, and he is all hearing and all seeing. The eyes are unable to perceive him, and he perceives all vision, and he is kind and all aware. And I testify that there is no God except Allah. He is alone and without a partner. He is the creator of everything, master of everything, pointer of everything, initiator of everything, and the Lord of everything. He judges with truth, and he is equitable in judging the commands justice. He commands justice, goodness, and fulfillment of the rights of the relatives and prohibits indecency, evil, and injustice. He does not lay on any soul burden except to the extent of its ability, and he is having the final argument. If he wills, he can guide all the people. He calls the people to the abode of peace, Darus Salam, and guides whosoever he likes to the right path. He does not make haste in punishing, and he does not punish without clarifying proof and evidence and without giving his signs and warnings. He does not ask his servants obedience in matters he has not explained to them, and he does not command them to obey one he has not appointed for obedience, all with regard of his obedience. He does not leave the people on their own choice, and he does not allow them innovation in the matter of his vicegerency. He, being in, is much higher than all, and I testify that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam is his servant and trustworthy messenger, and he performed the duty of propagation on behalf of his Lord as it is deserved, and he called to his path with wisdom and a goodly exhortation, and he acted on the book and commanded its obedience. And along with it and after him, he willed the people to remain attached to the purified Imam alayhi salam. And he stressed that the two shall never separate from each other till they meet him at the pool of Kausar. And the attachment of Muslims to both of them is in accordance with clear evidence based on the straight path as an illuminated faith, whose night is likely like the day, and the eternal and internal is like the external. And he did not miss out any argument or proof to convince the people so that no excuse remains for them, so that whosoever goes to perdition should do so after seeing clear evidence, and those who get life should also be after obvious proof. And I testify that indeed no one can become a believer if in some matter Allah and His Messenger command something but he follows his own choice. And indeed Allah creates what He likes and He chooses whatever He likes. And they can never become faithful until they consider the Prophet ﷺ as a judge in their disputes, and after that they follow the decision of the Prophet with utmost sincerity, and that they should submit to the Prophet's decision with absolute humility. And indeed, one who makes unlawful a lawful act, or vice versa, or he changes a prophetic practice, or reduces the obligatory ordinance, or alters a command of the Sharia, or creates an innovation so that he may be followed and the people may become attracted to him, then he indeed considered himself a partner to the Almighty Allah, and whosoever obeys such person has in fact claimed existence of God, other than the Almighty Allah, and he becomes eligible for divine punishment, and his abode is the fire. And the abode of unjust is indeed very bad. His deeds are wasted, and in a hereafter he shall be from the losers. And benedictions be upon Muhammad and his purified progeny. Sheikh Fiqh Abu Jafar Muhammad bin Ali bin Hussein bin Musa bin Bawawe Qumi, the author of this book, says, may Allah help him his obedience. That which motivated me to write this book was that when I was honored by the visit, ziyarat of Imam Ali ibn Musa Raza alayhi salam, I returned to Nishapur and stayed there. I realized that most of the Shia people who visited me were confused in the matter of occultation of 12th Imam, and doubts haunted them about his eminence, the Qaim alayhi salam. They had deviated from accepting the correct views and standards. So I began my endeavor to guide to truth and the right path with the help of traditional reports of the Holy Prophet and the Holy Imams alayhi salam. Till the time a learned and virtuous scholars from Bukhara came to visit us in Qom. I had always wanted to meet him due to his honesty, firm views, and correctness of behavior. He was He was Sheikh Najmuddin Abu Sayyid Muhammad bin Al Hassan bin Muhammad bin Ahmad bin Ali bin Salt Kummi. May Allah continue his tawfiq. My father and I used to narrate traditions on the authority of his grandfather, Muhammad bin Ahmad bin Ali bin Salt, and spoke well of his knowledge and actions, piety, excellence, and worship. Ahmad bin Muhammad bin Isa, with all his excellence and greatness, used to narrate traditions from Abu Talib Abdullah ibn Salt Qummi rahmatullah alayh, and Abdullah bin Salt remained here till he met Muhammad bin Al Hassan Safar and related traditions from him. When the Almighty Allah enabled me to meet a gentleman of such an excellent family, I thanked him for according me such a cordial reception and sincere audience. One day he told me about his meeting with the great philosopher and logician of Bukhara, and he also related to me one of his statements about his immense, the Qaim alayhi salam, which had put him in confusion, perplexity, and doubts with regard to the holy Imam, due to the prolongation of occultation and due to the cutting off news regarding him. Therefore, I explained to him some facts about his eminence and quoted some traditions of the holy prophets and the holy Imams alayhi salam in connection with the Imam, as a result of which that person got assurance and the doubts and misgivings that had inflicted his mind were removed. He listened with full attention to all the authentic traditions that are related to him and accepted them from the depth of his heart. He petitioned me to write a book for him on his subject. I agreed to do so and promised him that when the Almighty Allah would facilitate my return to my hometown, Ray, I will compile the relevant traditional reports on this topic. One night I drifted into sleep after thinking about my family, friends, and the bounties that Allah Almighty had bestowed on me. I dreamt that I was performing the circumambulation of the Holy Kaaba in Makkah, and in the seventh round I was near the black stone Hijr Aswad, and upon reaching it I was kissing it. I was saying that I had repaid my trust and fulfilled my covenant so that I might be a witness of this. At that moment, I had the honor of seeing my master, the master of the age, alayhi salam, standing at the door of the Kaaba. My heart began to beat fast with excitement, and he came to know my inner feelings, which were reflected in the worried expression of my face. I saluted him, and he replied to my salutation and then asked me, why don't you write a book regarding the occultation so that your sadness and worries are removed? I said, O son of Allah's messenger, I have compiled a number of books about occultation, He said no in this style. I order you to compile a book on occultation and therein mention about the occultation of the prophets, peace be upon them. After that, the Imam alayhi salam departed from there. When I woke up, I began to weep, supplicate, and express my humility till dawn break. In the morning, in compliance with the commands of the proof of Allah, I began the compilation of this book. While I pray for the help of Allah and I rely on Him and seek forgiveness for my shortcomings, my tawfiq is only from Allah Almighty. I rely on Him and I turn to Him.